Alright, so this is Battle Brothers. This is what the entire thing my presentation is about. My name is Elijah Chung. This is my advanced research project. So here's my problem statement. There's a lot of games that exist, obviously. Video games, board games, this one. Specifically, I'm talking about video games. There's a lot of them that exist, from the original Super Mario to Half-Life to Metal Gear Solid 5. And there's a lot of games that, come there's a lot of games, just in general. Many of them, that will be based on your preferences and all that. For me, there is a problem with the process of creating tutorials for games, specifically complicated games. Despite the effective guides and tutorials on most complicated games, it's occurring that the learning code has negatively impacted beginning players because sometimes the tutorials are either too simple, too vague, or in general just way too hard to. It's just the game is just hard to understand. What I want to do is I want to try and make it easier for beginning players to understand how to play one certain game, and hopefully to make them enjoy their time more, since there's some games that seem to be just out there to punish you. So, my research question: how do game tutorial systems work now, and what kind of improvements could be made to accommodate the experience level of the user? So the game, obviously, I'm using is Battle Brothers. Okay, Battle Brothers. To get the basic facts out of Battle Brothers is a tactical role-playing strategy game made by Overhyped Studio that was released in 2017. I personally got it around a year ago, but now, so I'm pretty late on the hype, I guess, as they say. The entire process of the game was where you are in charge of a mercenary company, and you explore an open world, a procedurally generated open world where you get to do whatever a mercenary company would do. Take contracts, collect money, recruit, die, and get killed, and kill some more. And is it hard? Yes, it is painfully hard, but it is so painfully hard that I love it. Take it as you will. Anyways, research. I put this in the wrong area, but research. There aren't, for me, when I search for tutorials, there aren't a lot of things regarding tutorials in video games. The most common one when it came to tutorials usually meant something related to computers or to some sort of coding, which is something that is helpful, but it's not something that I need, because I need it specifically for games. Originally, this entire thing was about how, just in general, kind of the effectiveness of tutorials. But once I found these two articles, it kind of switched it up. Specifically, the secondary article, which is the one that is kind of big. I've kind of based almost my entire research on, which is about the very complexities, about the impact on tutorials with users of varying skill and knowledge of the game, which has been quite helpful. So, the thing is, first I had to make a hypothesis. Obviously, I think it's kind of obvious for me is that the thing that's going to happen is where the less experienced the person is, the more, as I call, hand-holding they'll need in order to play the game. Then, of course, assumptions. I kind of already assumed that not many of people here actually play the game, because it's a relatively small community. Then research. Well, besides the articles that I had to use and write, there was also where I had to ask a small group of friends and acquaintances that had to actually play the game. And then, yeah, well, the conclusion to that really is me being here, talking about it, and compiling all my results. This is useless. All right, so for the first part of it, I asked my entire CAD 3 class about their thoughts on the game, and if they had even heard of it. The result was kind of expected. No one has ever played this before, and even worse, no one has even heard of it before. So we were off to a lovely start, as you can see. I wasn't completely surprised, but it does make it significantly more difficult when only one of you guys have actually played a turn-based strategy game. Anyways, so here are my test subjects. All 4 of them and their lovely pictures. So I asked 4 of them to play the game, just to kind of see how they do it. And like I said, I based it off of. I gave them a sort of handholding, as in I helped them to an extent. The results, yeah. This test subject 1. I'll not name names for personal privacy. Test subject 1 did not do. No offense to him, but he did not get past the tutorial boss. He spent all of his money on weapons, and I don't know what he really did, to be honest. I didn't really actually help him. Test subject 2 took a bit of time to understand it, but Adjusted was also the first to beat the tutorial boss because he was also the second person I asked. And he had a decent amount, but he also had the best name, so I'll let it slide. Test subject 3 adapted probably the fastest out of all of them. Was also required the least amount of handholding out of all of them. And finally, the last test subject 4 adapted to it pretty fast as well. But I also gave him the most amount of handholding out of all of them. So that's also probably the biggest reason. So limitations and changes. Okay, obviously, as you can see, there's been a lot of limitations that I had and problems. The biggest one I had was not many people knowing about this game or even playing it in the first place, because experience is pretty helpful in this sort of field. And on top of that, as also mentioned, there's not been a lot of research about video game tutorials specifically about things that I am looking for specifically, but mostly just about their complexity and how helpful they are. And then, of course, there's some changes I would have made. One, I probably would have asked some people who have actually played the game and who have actually or if they haven't played the game, I'd ask for those who have somewhat more experience in the genre of it as well. And that's all I have right now. I'm sorry, I didn't get rid of any of the exercise, so that I'm done.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Couple of questions, Elijah. So, really quick, can we go back to the slide with the research findings or the research articles? Yeah. So you mentioned 2 articles here, and so my question was, in terms of approach, per the article, what did you do based on the recommendations of the tutorial? The article mentioning tutorials, what was done different that helped your test subjects advance?
Well, obviously, because when it comes to the impact of tutorial in a game, this is the second one specifically.
Okay.
I in a sense was supposed to be their tutorial guide because I was the one with the experience. I was the one who actually knew what he was mostly doing, and so what I wanted to do. So what the handholding was basically me seeing how well they would do if they had or didn't have me to be there to guide them, because I watched all of them play. None of them knew how to even move. So I mean, it's understandable, but it's understandable because it is a kind of a complicated. It is basically just a more overly complicated chess.
So in that light, if you had to break down your categories of teaching, what are the pillars towards advancing in this game to be successful?
Well, one, obviously, is the thing that is most important is the basic controls. You're not going to get anywhere if you don't know how to move, how to actually how to use any moves at all, like as in like attacks and stuff like that. And then second would be stats. Obviously, because this is a pretty, although this is chess, it's like I said, it's overly complicated, and every character you have has stats where you must, which will depend on, which will most likely will impact how well your brother, as they're called, will last in a fight. And I'd say another right under that is builds, and what else is there? Builds and strategy, because builds can also very much impact your game. Where builds, which is you are crafting a certain brother for this role, will ultimately help you. It will most of them are like an extremely valuable asset because many of these will get you out of a pinch or get you or help you in a situation that requires this certain sort of niche that that brother can provide. And then at the bottom, what would I say at the bottom? Actually, I would put strategy near. No, actually, I would put builds near the bottom, strategy at third. I apologize for the little mix-up, but strategy, as in knowing how to move them around, because it's one thing to just rush them all towards the front door. It's different if you use their skills and abilities to be able to outsmart the AI, because the AI can be pretty smart as well, which is kind of what makes this game so hard, because the AI itself is extremely, I guess it's just extremely, it looks for it exploits what your weaknesses are very easily, and very quickly will do it right away if they see it.
I see. So then, with your subjects, you applied these principles and you saw a positive impact on their performance.
Most of the time, yes.
Okay. If you had to make changes, that's my last question. If you had to modify your approach, would you in any way? I think you did mentioning
Yes.
with the strategy, but is there any other slight modifications you would do in in next test subject? Let's say.
If I had the time, I would honestly make them play more of the game, because I only did the tutorial boss.
Right.
And that was already good, maybe 10-15 minutes of gameplay. But there's way more than just killing one bandit leader. There is much more. There's so much more to the world that they need to understand, such as contracts, enemy types, and even magic. Although that is limited to only a select few, there's still a lot of things that they need to know to get it right in order to do it. Because if not, I could only really give them the bare minimum, because due to time constraint. But if I would give me maybe a week, even maybe 2 weeks, and if I just had someone who would go home and play the game for maybe, I don't know, an hour or two every day, and come back, maybe with also of course me being there, maybe on phone, FaceTime, or there in person to help them, then I would see the bigger picture of how someone adapts.
I see. Wonderful. Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate it, and you're set. Thank you.